All shall love me and despair. What does Galadriel mean in her speech to Frodo after being offered the One Ring in Lothlorien? In this video, I want to give my personal interpretation of Galadriel's words, in a speech that demonstrates the temptation of the One Ring, and how a desire to do good with it leads to another Sauron under a different name and title.
And now at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of a Dark Lord you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair. She lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore she issued a great light that illuminated her alone, and left all else dark. She stood before Frodo, seeming now tall beyond measurement, and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall, and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again, and lo! She was shrunken. A slender elf woman, clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad.
With the construction of the sentence, "And I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night," I personally read this as a parallel between the morning and the night. It's certainly acceptable to read that Tolkien is describing both as terrible and beautiful, but I like to use the rest of the speech and the way other forces are compared to think of the morning being beautiful and the night as terrible, while still allowing that comparison between the two. Galadriel describes the sun, sea, and snow as fair, but references a mountain as if it is some unshakable power, stronger than the foundations of the earth, dreadful as the storm and lightning. Love is then coupled with despair. None of the other descriptions are formed in the way she speaks of the morning and the night. I read this as one being seen as beautiful and the other as terrible, but both go hand in hand, a pure and natural representation of Galadriel herself as the ring-bearer. This is a description of how Galadriel would be as this Queen of Middle-earth. It's easy for us to imagine a Dark Lord as being some terrible being to behold, with everyone below submitting out of terror and fear of his daunting presence, power, and dark majesty. Galadriel as a queen would have people drawn to her supreme beauty, like the beauty of the morning, yet the power she would wield would be as terrible as the night, a reference to darkness and the fear it holds. Fear would always be there, lingering, being shared with this unmovable love for this queen of the world. I view Galadriel's talk of love and fear, of beauty and power, as somewhat similar to Melkor in the days of his splendour, before his great fall. As I mentioned in my video of Melkor's desire for the Silmarils, Melkor once desired and loved light, but took on a form that was so overpowering in its brightness that he boasted it as unbearable for the children of Iluvatar to behold. Why would this be a desirable form? Melkor did not want them to imagine, or imagine that they could imagine, something else that would be greater than him, any other light that would make his light less great. It's a perversion of something that is supposed to be warm, safe, and nurturing. It shows that even light is being corrupted in some way. As a shadow, Melkor did not then conceive himself, for in his beginning he loved and desired light, and the form that he took was exceedingly bright. And he said in his heart, "On such brightness as I am, the children shall hardly endure to look, therefore to know of aught else, or beyond, or even to strain their small minds to conceive of it, would not be for their good. But the lesser brightness that stands before the greater becomes a darkness, and Melkor was jealous therefore of all other brightnesses, and wished to take all light unto himself." Galadriel's position as queen would reflect this in a way. Those she liberated from the tyranny of Sauron would worship her and love her, yet they would still fear the power of her. Even her beauty would be something they could fear, another perversion of something we so often think of in only a positive light. The One Ring has managed to twist Galadriel in a way that makes her greatest qualities something closer to the Dark Lord she would replace. With Sauron long having given up on subtlety and cunning in the fair forms that he could no longer hide behind, he turned to worship out of fear and terror from any who looked upon him. Galadriel would still be beautiful, but terrible. It's the same fall to worship out of fear and terror from those beneath the throne. Galadriel's speech is full of descriptions of her as a force of nature: the morning, night, sun, snow, storm, lightning, and earth. None of these forces can be halted or changed by those Galadriel would stand above. The morning and the night are unstoppable, one leads to the other, and the cycle goes on. Tolkien gives us comparisons with what we would often call frightening and overpowering forces, with what we may associate with goodness. Is the morning more beautiful than a storm? Lightning is destructive and dangerous, yet it is still beautiful to witness. The sea itself is awe-inspiring and can be a haven of tranquility. That doesn't stop it from being perilous and prone to change in a way where it suddenly becomes overwhelming and destructive. Through the One Ring, Galadriel will be all of the above. As a queen, she will only be different from a Dark Lord in that she will have obtained this position of power and authority through a desire to do good. Much like Gandalf, with the One Ring, she would be self-righteous. Fair and terrible, beautiful and dreadful, strong and overwhelming. Galadriel's test with the One Ring shows us that even a desire to do good with it will still result in a lack of freedom, and just another figure that will stand above all others, while demanding and expecting your love and worship.